So several people, as we've said, tried to warn British authorities about radical Islamist viewpoints from one of these suspects, a man who law enforcement admits was on their radar. So here now, senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, and Brad Thor, former member of Homeland Security's Analytic Red Cell Unit. Gentlemen, thank you very much. 20,000 jihadists on the streets of the United Kingdom. How many of those would you imagine have phone calls from the imam and two different friends and neighbors reporting them, and that is not followed up on? Tony.
Well, look, I'd say that there's probably a pretty good percentage, and I think the British are probably going through right now, combing all the records and trying to figure out who else has been reported. Let's be clear on this, Martha. They've talked about quote-unquote networks, multiple networks. This man was part of a network. This network was reported and ignored. And this, as Peter King just said, there is a pattern of this both there and here. So I think you're talking about 2 to 3% of that group which probably have on their mind doing something active. And if you're talking about thousands of people, that's still a pretty big number. But it's not infinite. And the reason that that we saw this failure again is you have the same people in charge. Theresa May was the Foreign Service, the Internal Secretary during the last 4 years. It's because of she and other people who have set up policies for this system to fail. So if you have a system that's set up to fail, you have people reporting and no follow-up, you're going to see more of this.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, it's so disappointing to hear that these reports were made. And, you know, often I think Muslim communities are criticized for not doing enough to put up a red flag or to turn someone in if they have a concern. So here you have an imam and neighbors doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And yet they're now frustrated because no one listened to them.
Well, and you know who's also frustrated, Martha? Law enforcement, because the bar is so high to prosecute these guys. We have zero tolerance when it comes to child pornography. Why don't we have zero tolerance when it comes to radical Islamic ideology? If you go watch these videos or you go listen to hate sermons like Anwar al-Awlaki, then you ought to automatically, that ought to be a prosecutable offense. And if you even let one of these guys sleep on your couch when he's planning one of these attacks, we ought to be able to lock you up for not years, but decades. We need to lower the prosecution bar and make it much easier to close cases and lock these people up, because as Congressman King said, we're seeing the same pattern again and again and again. They get on FBI radar or over at MI5, MI6, wherever they are in the world, and then they close the cases on them. So let's make it easier to prosecute, not harder.
And these events, Tony, have to be very empowering. This is the third one since March. So, you know, they're looking at this and saying, this is working pretty well. You know, you can jump in your van and you've got your knives and you get out and you're going to terrify people all over this city on a regular basis.
There's no downside. That's right. So as was just alluded to by Brad, look, we've done this before. Also, during the old days, during the Cold War, if you were supporting the Russians, or if you were a communist, you weren't going to be getting any slack. You would be locked up. So we've done this before. Also, if you remember, Martha, right after 9/11, we did not have any major terror attacks in the United States. It's not that they didn't try. We had very severe, very effective methodologies, intelligence methodologies, working with law enforcement and special operations to help do some very severe things. I don't want to get into details for obvious things. I'm sure Brad's aware of some of them. But the idea is we've done this before. It's not an issue of can, it's an issue of political will. And everything we've seen has been bad.
I want to ask you a quick question to both of you, just a few seconds left. This decision for Qatar to be cut out of the Gulf states conglomerate, is it because they're too cozy with Iran? Is it because they're fostering terrorism more than these other countries would like to see? Brad, quickly, and then over to Tony.
I think there's a lot of both going on, Martha, and I think any movement to address terrorism in that part of the world is a good thing, however this shakes out.
Tony.
Now, look, Qatar has been playing both sides of the fence, so is the Saudi Arabian. So I'm not sure who the good guys and bad guys are here. We have our largest base in Qatar, something we have to take very seriously, though.
So our next guest, thank you very much, gentlemen. Good to see you tonight.